Hello, I'm Susan Arsenault and welcome to Real Estate Today. Today we're going to talk about the spring market and getting our home ready for the spring market. And we're going to do the big items today. We're going to do the outside and the inside, just the big items, things like roofs and basements. And we have some interesting topics for you. But today I want to introduce you to Ed Cox. We work together at William Raveis. And Ed, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I sure can. First of all, I've been in the real estate business for just a little bit more than 6 years, but most people recognize me more from my experiences. I worked at Ski Market for 25 years. So that's probably where most people, if they see me, still think of me as working at Ski Market. But I am in the real estate business.
You are in the real estate business. Tell me, what do you think after 6 years? I've been in much longer, and I really don't even tell people how long I've been in. It's been so long. But anyway, so tell me what you think about it. It's a pretty interesting business, isn't it?
It is. The one thing that I would say is that timing is everything. Mm-hmm. And I exited from Ski Market, and my father had been in the real estate business back in the 60s.
I didn't know that.
And he had told me that he thought that I would enjoy the business. So while being unemployed, I decided, and I had always been interested in the real estate business. My wife always thinks that whenever I'm on vacation, I always grab real estate books and decide that I want to live wherever I'm on vacation. So, but anyway, my timing couldn't have probably been worse because I got my license. I started my career, and the bottom fell out of the real estate business. And I have to say that I'm probably one of the few that have never been in a really booming real estate business.
It's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
So I'm ready for that experience. I've certainly seen the other side of it.
Well, I'm going to see a lot of what you've learned here because we're going to be talking about some issues that I'm going to ask you about. If you're thinking of putting your house on the market in 2014 or 2015, these are some of the items that you might be interested in thinking about. You know, it's very easy to live in your house and enjoy your house, but if you're thinking of putting your house on the market, you got to start thinking differently. You got to start putting yourself in the position of the buyer, and what are they going to want and what are they not going to want. So we're going to do the inside, the outside, and we're going to do replace and repair. That's a big difference of like a replacing a roof or repairing a roof, so those are big issues. So we want to talk about that. So Ed, I'm going to start with a list about the outside issues. What should a homeowner do when they're looking at their roof or they have a leak? What would your advice be as a real estate agent to them?
Well, I think the first thing is that my feeling is that it depends on exactly how old the roof really is. First of all, if you know how old it is, if the shingles are curled, and then there's probably going to be concern if a buyer takes a look at it because those are very self-evident. If the roof is is not in that old and ready to be replaced, then the next thing is that if it's a leak, a small leak, it would probably be to call in an expert, and they can probably give you a recommendation as to whether or not they can match up the shingles, and they probably can, or at least get close, or do just a bigger section just so that it blends in with the rest of the roof.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that. I don't know. I never seemed to notice it before, but all of a sudden there's this black streaks that come on a roof. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. I've had it on my roof.
Okay.
And a few clients we have remedied. I would say 3 or 4 years ago, one of my clients had it, and it was severe on his roof. And we did some research and did the Google.
Okay.
He ended up calling in a roofer who had the service supplies to do it. Since then,
so what did they do?
Well, they came in and spray stuff on the spray stuff on the roof, and then come back. And depending on whether or not it's the black, or if it's moss. Okay. So the color kind of dictates it, but the repair is basically the same.
Is that a power washing type technique?
Yeah. The one thing is that they concern about the power washing is that it can be severe. So I went to the local hardware store and they sold me a gallon of this solution, which you put in and use your garden hose, just like you would be using to fertilize plants in the backyard, and you spray the whole roof. The same treatment is for the black, which is an algae, or the green, which is a moss. But what you do after you've done the spray is a little bit different. But I've done it on my house, and we sprayed it on, and you let it sit. The algae is something that's going to spreads from one house to another. So
really?
Yeah, and one of the things that we noticed.
That's the black.
That's the black.
Okay.
And the one thing about the black is that a lot of people, when they're doing roofs, everything used to be black, so you didn't notice it as much. So now if the shingles are lighter colored and we're getting into this fashion thing, we did green on our roof, so the black became very obvious. So when you spray this on.
I like black roofs.
Yes, we've actually.
That's why I didn't notice it before.
Right. So anyway,
Oh my
you
God.
spray it on, and if it's the green mossy stuff, you have to brush it off with a broom, a roof broom, which you can buy at the local hardware store. The other stuff you can spray and then rinse off, and it usually takes 30 days and it's gone.
Well, that's pretty interesting because that's all about the curb appeal of the house.
It is.
If you're know a house came on the market and you're parked out front of it, or go by it 15 times to take a better look at it, and you see this black on the roof or green on the roof, all of a sudden the flag goes up that there might be something wrong with the roof.
I think it makes the roof look much, much older, even though it isn't.
On this show, we've talked also about the state disclosures. And so the state disclosures ask you the age of the roof, and lots of times people don't know, but it kind of speaks for itself when you look at it, or if there's an inspector there that looks at it. Can you just tell me, what do you think after a roof? Most roofs are 20 to 25 years. And so what happens when someone buys a house that the roof is 22 years? Aren't they usually looking for a new roof?
Yes, I believe they are. I mean, I think they are, but again, the condition, if the shingles are really curling and looks like it's 30 or 40 years old, which is what people think once you see the shingles curling, then I think that's one thing that they're going to be concerned about. And an inspector, they get right up on the roof. They walk around. So
sometimes, depending on the condition of the roof.
Depending on the condition of the roof.
Yeah, and they walk around and they take a look. But this is I think we've talked about the state disclosure, and we've also talked about contracts. The roof is a big issue. For a seller, the roof is a big issue. You have to know the age, as much as you can, the age of your roof, what condition it's in. We'll say that it's 15 years old, but it has moss or whatever growing on it. It's time to clean it and get it ready for the market. And so it's a very big issue.
I would say that if an inspector goes up on the roof and sees green moss on the edge of the roof, they will instantly think that it's always wet up there and going to take away a lot of the life out of the roof. If they see a perfectly clean, black or green missing from the roof, they wouldn't think the same.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go down to, while we're talking about roofs, about gutters and chimneys. I know lots of times in the inspections, the chimney needs a new cap on it, or the grout needs to be replaced and stuff like that. And can you tell me a little bit about the gutters? How have your clients reacted to gutters that were pulled down, or gutters that were non-existent, or sometimes I think the gutters cause problems in the basement with water?
Right. I mean, the one thing that I've, again, in inspections that I've been through with gutters, first of all, if the house doesn't have gutters, it's an immediate concern for inspectors, because the water is just going right over the edge of the roof and right down the edge of the foundation.
Well, the thing is, some contemporaries that I sold do not have gutters. They have them in the back of the house, but not in the front, because it's something about the aesthetic look of it.
The other thing is, they can sometimes, if it comes off the edge of the roof and down, if there's a setup underneath, curtain drains and set up below the ground, the water gets channeled away from the foundation. So there's other things you can do. But if there are gutters, what you also like to see is the downspouts, and have the water be pushed as far away from the house as possible. Sometimes it's done underground, which is ideal, because you don't see it.
Yep.
But those extra things you can buy at the hardware store will drain the water away.
Extensions?
The
Yeah,
extensions will
that
get the
you
water
have.
away
Yeah.
from the house.
Yeah, it's again another very big item that savvy buyers look at and see, and if they don't see it, their inspector's going to see it. And then we have walks and patios. Of course, the walks and patios. The big deal with the walkway is to get to the front door. What have you seen happen there? First of all, the walk has to be in pretty good shape so someone's not going to trip.
Right.
All right. Sometimes you have a front step that just, shakes a little bit when you get on it. So those are things. What would your clients want, or what would they say about something like that?
Well, I mean, the first thing that with the walkways is a lot of times, and in fact that happens at my house, is that roots have grown and they've pulled up some of the pavers, so there's a trip hazard. Again, that's something that the inspector right away will recognize and want repaired. If the stairway going up to the front door, if the railings are loose or even the steps are loose, those, if that's where they're entering, they're going to get a bad feeling before they even get to the inside of the house.
Yeah, we've talked on this show about curb appeal, and that's one of the, when your first impressions getting out of the driveway, which means the driveway has to be in decent shape, and walking up to that front door, that has to be, make sure you power wash that front door and make sure you can get into that front door without trees in the way or overgrown shrubs and stuff.
Right. The other one thing that I noticed with the pavers too is you get moss growing on it, and it kind of looks kind of neat, but it also does make it slippery. It does make it slippery. And again, with water on it and with the moss, again, your power washer could probably clean that off and make it look nice.
I know. Listen, we're not trying to discourage you. We're just trying to cover a lot of things. You're not going to have all these issues. You're going to have some issues. I'm sure some of your hot buttons, your roof might be one of your hot buttons, and you have a brand new 25, 30-year roof on your house. We're just trying to point out the issues that kind of either turn people on or turn someone off on buying a house. They have 4 or 5 to choose from. They love your house, but it needs a new roof, and so they're afraid of asking you for a new roof. And they really shouldn't be, because if it's 20 years old, then they really have the right to do that. One of the other big issues on the outside is the paint. I know the spring market starts around January 15th, so it's not a good time to paint. But if you're thinking 2 or 3 years ahead of time, you can get your house painted. Ed, do you have any advice or any experience on having houses painted that you think our viewers would like to hear?
Well, I mean, the big thing is that I think that fresh paint makes a house more appealing than old stale paint. But I also think that, again, from an expense standpoint, what you want to do is make sure that, everything is covered and that the paint isn't chipping off. If it is, then I think paint is going to be a very important thing. You can see it as you're walking up to the house. It just so happens that, again, at my house is that if I were to paint my house, I would want to paint the front and the southern side of it, because that's where it seems to get most of the weather and wear. I think one side of my house might not even need to be painted just yet. I'm not in the market to sell anyway.
You paint a side every year or something?
Well, there are some people who do that.
Yeah.
But the one thing also is that paint today, you can get matches to it. So you don't have, you can, touch up sometimes places where it's worn and needs to be painted. And if you take a paint sample into the local paint stores, they can match it up very well.
Mm-hmm. Another issue, now this is a issue, when a house starts getting 30 years old, 40 years old, people are looking at windows, and whether they already have had replacement windows or the original windows. So that's a big issue with home buyers today. What is your experience with windows?
Well, I mean, the first thing that is happening today with that is that energy efficiencies. So that if your window is 40 years old, any person who is in the window business is going to tell you that you are going to save energy by buying some of the new windows.
New windows, yeah.
I think most importantly is that if I were walking into a house and an inspector's looking at his house, he's going to want to open and close. He's going to want to open and close every window.
Yep.
So before the time came for an inspector to come through,
Yep.
I would try to make sure that the windows that you have are in operation. If it's in the summer, that all the screens are solid and don't have holes in them. And then, again, a replacement window is a sizable expense, and depending on where on the list it is for what things you're going to do, it might be a good idea, but...
Sometimes you see the sliders are replaced before anything else because
Right.
the slider to the deck or the backyard or even a walkout basement, that's a slider that gets used all the time.
Right.
And they used to be these gray metal sliders, and they were, just hard to operate from day one. And now they're wood or a vinyl coated wood, and
Right.
they're beautiful. They really, really are beautiful windows. But that's again with a house that's a little bit older.
Right.
You go into West Hartford, and all the houses are old, and lots of them had replacement windows. And so what happens when someone's coming to make an offer, they're going to say, well, I need to replace the windows, so I'm going to deduct $20,000 off the price of the house. I like everything else. So there's where the issues start, and there's where the problem. So you try to be ahead of it. And I know you can't take care of every little issue, but a few of the big ones, the roof, windows, paint, those are some pretty big issues. And the funny thing about it is when you have a home inspection, you don't want to be surprised.
Right.
All of a sudden you think, I thought my house was just perfect. And they come with 2 or 3 pages of things they want you to do. And so that's a little disheartening too. It really is. And then we talk, the one that we talked about that you reminded me of, the septic systems. Most of Simsbury, I've had clients call and say, I want a house that's on natural gas and public water. I said, well, I think you better leave Simsbury, go someplace else to
Right,
find that.
for sure.
But I mean, we've all had our horror stories about septic systems. But you've had a little bit of experience just recently about septics. You've had one fail?
Yes. Just recently, it was tank cracking, where we've had to replace the tanks. Haven't had to do a full system recently, but that does come as a surprise because a lot of times it's underground.
It's underground.
The one thing that I would recommend with the septic is that the next time, if you're due to have it cleaned, is maybe be there the day that the septic person is there and ask a couple questions. What do you think when they dig it up to do? Can you give me an idea?
Are you talking about the homeowner or
the homeowner,
or the
yes,
buyer?
The homeowner.
Okay.
When the homeowner,
okay. Both should be there.
Right. Well, actually, I'm saying this before you even put your house on the market. If you're due to have the septic cleaned,
all right.
is to meet the person and actually get maybe a little bit of a. Each time that I have our septic done, I meet the person there and I just try to get a little bit of a read of what they think. And so far, so good. I've passed the test each time.
But a lot of this is age related also.
It is.
I mean, if the septic is 40 years old, it's, there's going to be, you're going to find something wrong with it. There's
Right.
there's no two ways about it. You're going to find some things wrong about it. So those were a lot of the outside issues that we have. So now, Ed, you can grill me on the inside issues that we have.
Well, the inside issues, again, you deal with probably on a daily basis. And there are certain ones inside that are you use part of the year and not all of the year. But right away, one of the more expensive parts of the house is keeping you warm or keeping you cool in the summer. And I think, what would you recommend for the furnace?
Well, again, that's always age related. But I think generally they're saying that the newer furnaces are less, don't last as long as the old furnaces. So there's a big controversy there. Sometimes if a furnace has been cleaned and maintained every year and still working, there's really no issues. But the interesting thing is the state line or whatever, give me another name, in Granby is what? Is that state line? And
yep.
Somebody in Simsbury, I was thinking. Anyway, they give you on your furnace, they write down the date it was inspected, the date it was maintained, and then if a savvy homeowner keeps track of all of those bills, so that you can show the homeowner or the new homeowner, what you've done to the furnace, and they really, if that furnace has been maintained, lots of times it's in very good working order and there's no problems.
Right. The one thing that the inspector does when they walk into the house and they're in the basement, the
Yep.
first thing they do when they go to inspect the furnace is they look to see when it was last serviced. So my recommendation is before you put your home on the market, make sure that there's
You
a
have
clean service record on there so that it doesn't put up red flags before he even starts.
Yeah, and then also besides the furnace, you usually have a hot water heater, and then sometimes there's rust stains around the hot water heater, and so those are telltale signs also. So you've got to make sure. One of our recommendations is that you've got to vacuum your basement, and you've got to get rid of the cobwebs. And if you have the time, it'd be great if you painted your basement floor. It just then they're not going to be asking the questions. It's most likely an issue that's been taken care of. And so, but it just gives the appearance of being clean and neat if you paint your basement floor, right?
Yep. And while we're there, we might as well just talk about the basement in general. If you've had issues with water in the past, the one thing that has happened is that we had a big storm 2 years ago, so. Basements that never ever had water in it before
It's true.
may have had water that one
right.
time
That's
in
right.
30 years, and it was a lot of times you can say your basement has never had water in it. Well, those people might not be able to say that. So again, keeping records and being able to say that. But
that's another big issue on the state disclosure. Right, a state disclosure. They want you to reveal all different types of things in the basement is one of them, whether you've had water seepage, more than that, a foot of water, you have to disclose that. Most likely it's been repaired / fixed, but you need to know what happened to your basement, and if you can document any of those issues, that's really important. And then the inside issues, we're talking about maybe wall paint.
Wall paint. Well, my first question to you right away is if you were going to paint some rooms before you put your house on the market, would you go neutral or would you go with one of the current colors? And
That's a really hard call. It depends on the homeowner. Years ago, everything was all white or everything was all tan, boring beige, but we all loved it. And but now they're using more like Pottery Barn colors, and I think you want to make the house feel warm and inviting. And so each house is different if it's an older house or a newer house. So you have to kind of like, take some kind of a clue from the homeowner how they feel about whether they want bright colors or not. But color is definitely in right now. Color is definitely in. And I'm looking here we have tile, wood, and carpeting on the flooring. Right. If you have pets, it's difficult to keep everything in perfect condition all the time. The floors have to be redone, carpets have to be either cleaned or replaced, and tile has to be, if there's, I've done it before, drop something on a piece of tile and break off the end of it. Tile has to be replaced, the grout has to be cleaned. This is other issues that people have got to take into consideration when they're putting their house on the market. So you have to look into that. So Ed was talking about the outside, I'm talking about the inside, and one of my big items is lighting.
Yes.
All right, is having the right amount of light on when people are looking at your house. But that goes, like sometimes you can walk into someone's house and there's a canister bulb that's burnt, there's a light in the corner that's not working. All of that has to work. All of that has to come into play when you're putting your house on the market. So that one isn't too hard. I mean, we've given you a lot of hard things to do, but this one is pretty easy. And
well, the one thing I would say about the lighting is this is the one moment that I talk about that I would consider is not taking the fluorescent light bulbs that take forever to warm up in your house. This might be the time to actually use some of the bulbs that come instantly on and invest in those back, even if it's the older bulbs, so that when you turn a light on, get full light into the house, and it doesn't take 5 minutes
I know.
for them to warm up.
I hate those lights.
I don't even like them, but for sure, if you were turning the
That's
light on in a bedroom and it takes forever, by that time you've already walked out of the house, but out of the room before it's even warmed up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it might be a good idea to switch out of the fluorescent bulbs in some of the strategic rooms for sure.
We're pretty good at that, though, Ed. We go put the lights on ahead of time.
Yeah.
Put the lights on ahead of time and the heat on a little bit higher.
Well, for sure, if you know that that's what's going to happen, is all the lights are going to be on, that's a good idea to do for sure.
I've got a few little things here about minor repairs. Our time is running short, and I have to make sure you replace the cracked tiles on the floor, clean the grout. I think I mentioned that. Patch holes in the wall. I know I was ready to leave a house and took down a poster and found a hole in the wall, and we're not very happy about it. So you might find a few surprises. Fix doors that don't close. That sometimes can be a pain because you got to take the door down and shave the bottom a little bit and then put it back up. Fix drawers that don't close. That's in our kitchen.
In the kitchen for sure.
All right, you have to take, you want to stand back of your kitchen and look at it and make sure that everything closes properly. I see you're laughing. Why? Have you had an experience with that?
The reason why I laugh is that in one of the homes that I had listed, I went over and we opened and closed, the cabinet doors. And I realized that a couple of the doors didn't work. Well, the homeowner's been living there so long, they didn't even realize that the drawers didn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, they always compensated for it. So you definitely have to take a step back and look at the kitchen and use the drawers like a buyer would, not yourself.
Yeah. That reminds me of the story about my brown refrigerator with all my other almond appliances. And I lived in the house for 2 years, and my mother finally said, "Why aren't you getting a new refrigerator?" I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Your refrigerator's brown, Susan." I said, "It is?" And you just see it, and it doesn't even register anymore. So that's the whole thing. You got to step back, take a look, and say, if I were a buyer, would that bother me? Would that put a red flag in my head? Anyway.
An almond refrigerator.
So it was brown. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to us today. I hope we have given you some advice, a little bit of advice on getting your house ready for the market. It doesn't all have to be done in a month. It can be done in a couple years. But those are some big issues that are going to show up on your state disclosure that you're going to have to answer questions about. So thank you again, and hope to see you next month. Thank you. Bye now.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.